something that I was super excited about was that we got the announcement of the new Ghostbloods trilogy in the Mistborn universe by Brandon Sanderson. But it wasn't just an announcement. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm planning on doing this. No, he actually read the first chapter of this new book, the first book of this trilogy. And he posted the video of this where he's reading his own work, which in itself is already super cool. But then you can also read the text on his website, brandonsanderson.com. And I want to talk about it with you, Dominic. You are still watching or listening to the LegendFiction show. I'm Father Roderick. I'm a priest. And I'm a fantasy writer, and my co-host is Dominic D'Souza. And also, not completely, how do you say that, a noob in the world of Brandon Sanderson. Am I correct?
No, I think I might be 2% more of a geek than you are, but you've read other books and I've read some other ones.
So this fragment, or this first chapter, it's a full chapter that he read. You haven't read it yet, right?
I haven't, no, so tell me about it.
So I read it just before we started recording, and I honestly couldn't stop reading. It is so well written. It starts with, and I tried to listen to Sanderson reading it to his audience. So he's in this big audience, and this big, how do you say that? So it's a con.
Convention hall?
It's a bit like the Legend Haven con that we're preparing. So he's got like hundreds of people in the room with him. He's on stage, and he's reading this from, I think, from his phone or from a small tablet. But you have all the audience reaction, which is very cool. Mm-hmm. And so I looked up the text, and from the first paragraph, I was hooked. I was so hooked. So it tells the story of this young woman, and she's walking in a street. However, like in the first sentence, he does world building so well that you can picture it. So you hear, and there is the light is like a stroboscope effect, because there are cars flying overhead. And so I immediately picture a city like Coruscant in Star Wars.
Yeah, a bit of Blade Runner.
Or Blade Runner, or did you see The Fifth Element
from
Luc Besson?
Yep.
You have all these flying cars, and she is in a busy street. It's a sunny day, and you know that this feels contemporary. There are lots of people walking past her, cursing at her. So because she's holding up the foot traffic. So it feels like, oh, this is like New York, where people apparently are quick, very easy to let other people know their discontent. Now, I'm not an American, as you know, so I don't know how that is in your part of the United States, but I just picture Manhattan. And so she is, I think, checking her watch. So there are watches in this universe, because she's late. She wants to go to a con, like a conference. And it's apparently some kind of Comic-Con type of event, which again is like, I never thought I would read this in the Cosmere. They have Comic-Con in the Cosmere. How cool is that?
And then to read that at a convention, like he's totally playing to the fans right there. That's so smart.
And of course, Sanderson himself has his own personal Comic-Con right now. And so he does this every year. So I imagine that a lot of his experiences and the experiences of the fans will help you get into this story. It's already in like a shared culture that he taps into to immediately get us in. So because of course his target audience, fantasy fans, science fiction fans, they know these cons. That is part of our culture. And so when he talks about this young woman who wants to get to this con, you immediately can imagine that you are there. You know, this is a story that we're all familiar with. So she walks up to the ticket booth, trying to get a ticket. So probably my deduction is there is no online world, because normally you cannot go to a Comic-Con today without pre-ordering your tickets.
Right.
She just walks up to a ticket booth the way it was in my youth. You just go and buy a ticket, and then they would let you in. But the whole event is sold out, and we hear that she has been involved in the organization of this con. And she's surprised, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's sold out. We never sold out before. And so there's a bit of a common history there between her and the con, but she has to buy a ticket. So why? She's no longer involved in the organization. However, she wants to go there for a signing, and that's all we know. And then she talks about like what would he do? So apparently this is about a special guest. Maybe it's like the equivalent of a Brandon Sanderson type celebrity who's going to be at that con and sign. Now, again, this is so funny. It's almost like an inside joke, because if there's one thing that Sanderson does all the time, signing
everything.
I mean, if you watch any YouTube video, he is there and he talks, and at the same time, people shove a book underneath his hand, and then he signs it, and then he must sign like 200 books in one sitting while he's recording a YouTube video.
Just from what you're talking about with this opening chapter, the number of questions that he opens up. Obviously, the massive question is, why does she want to be there? What is this con? What happened such that it's sold out so fast? Who's the person that she wants to get, the signing from? And obviously, how does it all connect to, taking down tyrants and elemancy, gunshots or jumping?
Yeah.
So it's like, what is it? X-Men kind of thing with magic?
Because this reads like science fiction. Especially because of the flying cars. My initial, vibe was like, I'm no longer in a fantasy world. I'm in a science fiction world. I'm in the future world.
How do you mix those together? Yeah.
Well, and my biggest question was in these first few paragraphs was, how on earth is this Mistborn? And then something really interesting happens. So she is ready to give up. And then she has this inner thought like, no, he wouldn't give up, so I'm not going to give up. And then she goes to like a back entry. She probably knows the premises. And then she sees a friend of hers who is still involved in the organization. And she's like, okay, maybe he can get me in. And that is exactly what happens. And right before that, she's, I think, near an alley or an alleyway. And then she sees this mysterious cloud. And it's a mist cloud. And nobody notices it because it's Manhattan. Everybody's busy. There's so much architecture around you, so much noise.
There's always something leaking out of a sewer vent somewhere.
Yeah, but she clearly knows that this is the mist of Mistborn. This is not just a cloud. And she reaches out for the cloud and she touches it. And then she closes her fist, and then she sees these little tendrils, and it's written in a very organic way so that you, as a Mistborn reader, know this is the mist from Mistborn. And so you're immediately reassured, like, oh, we're still in the Mistborn universe. And the mist is still there. What does this all mean? And then you're full of questions. You're ready to follow her inside. And I'm like, okay, I want to see what Comic-Con looks like in the Mistborn universe, in the Cosmere. And then you're plunged into a garden.
What?
And there's a young girl. And there is, I think, her father or something like that, who is working in the backyard, and he's picking up insects.
Okay.
And he's like, okay, so we're in a different place. This is a parallel story. This is somewhere else. Maybe this is in the countryside. Or you get the idea that this is not a city. We're in the backyard of some, I don't know, some rustic outdoor environment. And so there's this young girl, and I think it was her father or her grandfather, I'm not sure. And he's teaching her about insects. And then he shows her an insect, and he says, these are good insects because they eat all the little critters in the garden, which we cannot exterminate, and so they're good. But then you have these, and he shows another one, and then he shows the belly of the insect, and he says, you see, this one has a cross, and if it has a cross or one line, that's the difference between a dangerous insect and a very good insect. And I am immediately thinking, oh, this is all metaphor. This is clearly something he's setting up for, a theme in the book. But then gets more interesting. He shows an insect, and at first the child says, well, that's probably a good one, right? Because it has a cross, I think. And then the grandfather or the father figure says, well, no, actually, if you look closely, this is an insect that is faking to be a good insect.
Oh my goodness.
But it has disguised itself as a good one, so it wouldn't be exterminated. And then he kills it. he pinches the head and he squashes it.
Yes,
and he says, this, we need to be super, super careful, because if we let this one run loose, then, it will wreak havoc. And I'm thinking, oh, this is all metaphor. This is foreshadowing the events. This is about good guys, and bad guys that
pretend
to
be good guys.
They pretend to be good guys. Love it. And then the girl goes inside, and then it's not finished, because you're like I was a bit like, where are we now? And how does this relate to the world? Are we even in the same time? And then there is a car that gets closer to the house. And the guy is like, I don't have a car. I don't even have a car parking space. And he knows they're coming for me. So he is sending the child away and says, okay, you go there. But he knows something is about to happen, maybe something bad, but they are coming for him. And then the chapter ends with some kind of security people, or maybe, I don't know, some agency officers. They enter the house. They don't even have a key. They can just barge in, and they are going to ask him something or tell him something, or I don't know if he's in trouble. Or it felt to me like, oh, this is a classic call to action. This is the inciting
Very
incident where he
is
brought into the story. And because there's the mention of this car, you associate it with the cars in the first part of the chapter. So you are like, this is in the same world. It's a bit retro future. And that's the end of the story. And I was like, but chapter 2. Come on,
do this to us.
This is not fair. I want to read more. But it was so immersive. So what is your reaction when you hear me kind of recount this story?
I mean, just out the gate, he is such a master of opening chapters where he creates questions. He creates these really wonderful characters. And then he puts them in incredible or interesting circumstances with one weird thing going on that just gets you, it just makes them irresistible. You got to keep reading. Personally, I am super interested to understand where this goes, because how do you mix kind of a fantasy level magic system and a world, and then bump it into the 80s with flying cars